Let me get this camera situated. Is that an okay angle? Probably not quite. It's a little bit funky, but it is what it is. How are you guys doing today? Are we live? Am I live on the right channel? Looks like I am. Alright. So I'm going to expect that everyone has their stuff together. They got their painter palettes out, they got their water ready, and you guys are ready for this. If you aren't following on, that's fine. I'm going to be, giving instructions and talking about stuff, but, hey. Bottom left corner is cut out a bit. Not too concerned as long as you can see a majority of it. Is that okay? I think that's going to be okay. And I'm going to get the other camera going. Sorry for my jank setup. It's about the best I can do. Taping one camera onto the other is basically what we got going on here. So you guys are on the top camera, and then the DSLR that I use for all my filming is directly below you. There we go. Alright. I don't know if this is a glitch. There's a chat and comment section. Yes, that is how YouTube intends for it to be. I don't know why. So, let's get started. Make sure you got your water ready, which you guys can't see, but I have a little thing of water. Is everyone ready? I'm not. Emotionally, I'm like a little bit fried. I didn't sleep well last night, but I'm going to do my best to try and give a good lesson. So I'm going to start with the raw umber. Okay? So we're going to mix the raw umber with a 50-50... Well, let me start the music. What am I doing? Just need some canvas dimensions. This should be 11 by 14. Okay, cool. Everyone's got their stuff together. Here's the music. There we go. Okay, so I'm taking the white and the raw umber, and we're going to be mixing that together to get our base first level down. So it's going to be a 50-50 mix. So 50% white, 50% raw umber. You're going to need a little bit of this, not a lot. Try and not go too overboard with it. Eyeball it. This is not going to be super important, but it is going to be our base layer. So my canvas is white, as most canvases are. So kind of try and use that as an eyeball on how close this paint is to whatever color settings that your monitor is set to. This is the color you're aiming for. Kind of like a, not quite fleshy tone, but like 50-50 white and raw umber. Okay. And I'm going to take my big brush that I got here, the one that I told y'all to get, that I didn't take good care of, because it's all crusty now. Can you guys hear me alright when I move away from the mic? I'm going to get a little bit of water on it, just that way it loosens it up. You guys don't have to do this. It's just because I don't take good care of my stuff. I need to get better about that when it comes to art. There is paint on my glass. It's probably not good. Anyway. Okay, so I'm going to take my big brush, and we're going to be filling in this area up in the top. And just like the last one, I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about what we're doing right up at first. We're going to work into that. So I'm going to fill in this area over here. Going to do a little bit along the side, and a little bit over here. We're not doing one from a video game this time. Not explicitly. I'm going to tie it back to video games because, this is Artcade. It's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm going to have a little bit in each corner, not a lot. And art history teachers are going to hate me for doing that. We're actually going to have to wait for this to dry as well. So I've prepared a little bit of a speech-ish that I want to give before we get started. But generally speaking, your canvas should look something along the lines of this. Maybe a little bit more in that corner, less in that corner, more in that corner, what have you. But something along these lines. And just clean off this brush this time properly. Stream just started, yes. So this is a good time for you to go and get your cool thing. I mentioned that you needed something cool that we're going to be painting, sort of, not really. That is going to be important for your work today. So, my cool thing is going to be that skull over there. I forgot to hit the record button. Oops. Alright, well, I'm doing okay. How are you guys doing? Press the camera remote. Okay. Alright, so now that we've gotten this base layer, I thought the stream was happening tomorrow. Nope, today at 5, and it is 5:07. So we got our base layer down. You'll notice there's a lot missing in the middle here, and when we did the base layer for the Subnautica video, we ended up doing the entire canvas. Did I find a cool name for these art tutorial streams? I did not yet. The reason I'm using this backdrop, this color here, is because the yellow we're using is very transparent. You'll see me mess with it in like the Hermes drawings and stuff like that. I'm doing alright. But this paint is super transparent, so we're going to use this as a basis for some of the stuff that we're going to be doing in the corners. I'm going to quickly scroll over here and try and speak a little softer and bring you guys something else. So I'm going to let you guys catch up on that, and then you need to let that dry. Precision is not too key at this point of the game. Today is Wednesday, right? Yeah, okay. Alright, so I want to talk about, and I'm going to bring the music down. How are my levels? Am I too loud? I'm going to talk about an artist real quick. In fact, let's turn off the music entirely. Why is the screen black? Because I'm going to be talking about something while we wait for that paint that we just put down to draw. It just turned Thursday for me, jeez. Howdy. So while we wait for that paint to dry and for people to go and get their cool things that they're going to be painting, preferably something that doesn't mind being moved around, realize that living actual creatures might come up as a thing that someone wants to paint. It's not going to work out that well, especially cats. They're too finicky to paint. I'm going to be talking about an artist born in 1881. We're going to be kind of dealing with the stuff that he was doing. So one of his least famous, but I feel like most important paintings that he ever did was these two right here. So both of these were done when he was 15 years old, which it sounds super impressive, but also when you think about it, like, people in 1881 didn't have a whole lot to do. Like, you could go play hoopstick, or you could do art, or you could go to work. And so if you had enough money, you probably, you know, were doing art and not hoopstick. Because I can tell you the number of times that I played hoopstick on one hand. Actually, I can't because I don't have that few fingers. My point is that when you have nothing to do but art, you're going to end up doing this. And this. Both of these were done, all three of these paintings were done when he was 15 years old. So when you're at this level at 15, where do you go with yourself? Like, I have not gotten to the subject yet, Zarketh. We're just discussing art for a bit. When you're at this level when you're 15 years old, what do you do with yourself? Like, this is basically photorealistic, you know? This is very common Renaissance master sort of looking stuff. Like, what do you do from here? And the answer is this, alongside a bunch of other things he ended up doing. Once you can hit the form where you can do realism perfectly, you're going to start doing some weird crap. And that's what Picasso ended up doing. So what we're going to be talking about today is Picasso explicitly analytic cubism, because I feel like it's one of the most important core things that happened to modern art, and I hope will give you an appreciation for the good modern art that's out there. So during this time, he was hanging out a lot with a guy named Brock. I'm going to show you side by sides. This was like, I think like a 6-month period that they were just hanging out on like almost a daily basis. And you can see their work kind of mimicking each other. Brock used to work as a like a decorator, so he had stencils and stuff like that. So you'll notice that stencils were not part of the list. We're not going to really be worried about that today, but they were looking at each other's art on a fairly regular. In fact, they were hanging out so much, Brock compared his relationship with Picasso like two mountain climbers tied together. In a similar way, Picasso said that Brock was like his wife. Like, they were very close with each other at this time. And I feel like this part, even though it was just a small part of Picasso's life, was hugely important. Because if you look at the image on the left and you compare it to what he did later with something like Guernica, you can see that there are like some similarities. Like how the lines are used and stuff like that. So we're going to try and figure out what he's doing here in this painting. Well, let's go back to this one. So this is a guitar. If I tell you it's a guitar, you're going to believe me. Though I have to tell you it's a guitar, maybe. Whereas other paintings, for instance, like this one, I don't have to tell you what's going on in this painting. You understand it. You don't have to like have it explained to you. And you can visualize going over into that corner of the room next to the I would guess, nun? Or like trying to get through the door that guy is sitting next to. Similarly, you could probably explore the rest of the chapel, you know, shown on the left there. Whereas this one pretty much stops you. It's like you can't go very far in this one. If you think about the Mona Lisa, you could travel for miles in the background of that painting. Right? That's sort of what this is about. You know? Hey, Twibs. So, if we're going to tie this back to video games, this is how I actually ended up understanding this when I was taking art classes in college. This is a guitar viewed from every single angle at once, basically. And I said, what? And then I thought about this. Texture map, right? We kind of do that now with video games, that we put, you know, texture maps down, and that's how you get to look at a thing from all sides. That's kind of what's happening here. It's obviously done more artistically, but I think the comparison is there. This is obviously a little bit more formative. Like you can tell what this is now that you know how video games work, but you can see how this works. So the nice thing that I asked you to go get, something that you want to draw, is going to be used in this way. We're going to be viewing it from as many different angles as possible. There's a couple of things that we're doing that Brock and Picasso didn't do. Explicitly, I didn't tell you guys to get charcoal or sand or stencils or oil paint. Mainly because I just wanted to stick with the tools that we had from the last Artcade. I feel like that more or less explains what was going on there. If you have any questions as far as analytic cubism, and this obviously led on to synthetic cubism, which did not require a subject in order to be formed. They're a little bit harder to tell apart. I did horrible at this part of art history. I was not an A grade student, I'll tell you that much. But anyway, I'm going to check and see if our paint is dry. This is one of the reasons that we're using acrylic paint. So if you started painting right around the same time as I did, your paint is more or less dry, you know? So you should be able to go. Now, this corner for me is still wet, so I'm going to be ignoring it for a little bit. But there's a telemarketer calling me. So we're going to be focusing on trying to do it the way that they did it. There's a lot of instructions online that are just completely wrong. So before you get yourself into a tizzy, art teachers that are looking at this, or art history historians that are looking at some random dude on the internet's explanation of analytic cubism, we're going to not be using the stuff that they were using. So for the next step, because we didn't get black, which is one of the main colors that you need for analytic cubism, you're going to have to make your own. And we're going to be doing that using the raw umber and the cobalt blue hue. I am running low on cobalt blue hue, so I may be switching over to actual black at some point during this. But I'm going to go and mix that up, then I'm going to start up the camera again. I'm hoping that by the end of this you can have an appreciation for analytic cubism and an appreciation for what we're doing here. And what they were doing back in the day. It led to a lot of things. You see people like Modran taking a lot of the elements that we are about to do and using them in other works. So anyway, music. So you're going to take your raw umber and again 50-50 mix of raw umber and cobalt blue. This is going to be our bootleg black. You're going to need a decent chunk of this throughout the course of this. So mix up a decent amount, but try and not bankrupt yourself. If you're going to lean towards more blue or black, lean a little bit, or more towards blue or brown, lean a little bit more towards brown. But try and make it as close to 50-50 as possible. And the end result should be a cool brownish, bluish gray. Does that make sense? We're going to be using that to sketch the outline. So in order to do that for this painting, we're going to... Alright, good luck and have a good sleep, man. You can always catch this later on the VOD. If you are catching this on the VOD, I highly recommend that you watch the last couple of Artcade videos that I did, because they're kind of leading up to this. I can plan a lot further out with Artcade than I can with my other channels. So you're going to take a little bit of water, not a lot, but just a little bit so that way your brush is wet. We're going to be using the little brush here. And you're going to get just a little bit of the paint on your brush, and we're going to use this to sketch. It's going to be hard to do this in Photoshop and DOS programs. Show me your results for sure, because I do want to see how things are turning out for people. So when they would do it, they would get up and they would move around whatever they were analyzing. Obviously with the setup that we have here, I can't do that. I don't really have the room. And maybe you don't either. So I'm going to be just shifting this guy around however I need to in order to get the drawing done. So I'm going to look at a portion of it, and I'm going to try and like trace it with my eye. So I'm going to turn on the camera again. Alright, and then I'm going to trace I'm going to go with his eye socket there. I'm going to just sort of, with my eye, try and trace along with where I'm going with my hand while looking at the skull. I don't have to look at the canvas necessarily. Although apparently it looks like I do because I can't paint without looking at it every now and then. And perfection is not the name of the game today. If you're a little bit off, don't worry about it. We're going to be messing with these lines quite a bit. And in fact, as you saw with the guitar, it's not going to look a lot like a guitar or a skull or what have you by the end of this. Though, when we do our halfway point, when we actually show off what we ended up doing or what we were doing, let me know what your thing was. You can draw your guitar if you'd prefer, Blanca. You draw whatever you want to draw. What is the smallest screen that you should buy? I'm more concerned about the color options on your screen than I am the size of it. You know, obviously if it's super small, you're going to be having some issues. I'm not terribly proficient with, you know, digital art, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. So I got some elements of the skull that I like. I like this part of the skull, but I need to add in some other stuff. So I'm noticing, I don't know if you guys can see it, and it looks like you can't. I have the lamp that I use to light my face whenever I, you know, turn on my face cam, which is rare. I'm gonna get a little bit more of that black that we've made, and I'm gonna take a little bit of that, and I'm not really concerned about where it is in relationship to that. So I'm gonna kind of sketch that in as well, because I feel like it. I want a nice round shape over here. And then the light bulb actually proper in the thing. Need to get a little bit more paint going. This might be a little bit adventurous for someone who's new to art, but also I figure if you get a little bit screwed up, if it looks a little wonky, if you can't, you know, exactly look at the thing and draw it perfectly, you can just, you know, use it as an experience. A lot of people who start doing realism get way too bent out of shape on whether or not they're actually getting it perfect, and that's not good for you. Try and get it close. Try and do it as perfectly as you can. We're going to be screwing it up later anyway. Don't worry too much. And then I feel like adding in, it's sitting on my laptop that I use, so I'm going to add that in as well. And there's like an A there because it's a Toshiba laptop, so I'm going to add that A in for Toshiba. Put that there, and then I'm going to move some things around because I should be looking at this from multiple angles, but obviously we can't because we're seated at a computer. So I'm going to be moving the skull around instead. So now I got it like that. Well, you know, in order to do it like, you know, I was showing you in this other, you know, art history lesson texture map, we're going to be doing a similar sort of thing. We're going to be going from the side of the eye there, but continuing on from the angle that we're at. This is very similar to the way they were doing it here. You know, you notice on the left side of the guitar, you can see that it goes from the front to the side in a fairly, like, clean line, right? Like, the differentiation is not super clear. You can kind of see where it goes weird down in the bottom left as well. You can see the bottom of the guitar and the bottom right. So, back to the camera. I'm going to start adding that in. So I've moved the thing, but I'm going to keep drawing. So this is that eye there, right? So I'm going to keep drawing from where I'm seeing it. So the skull from there, if we're following along from where it's at, has gone a bit wonky. The angle is weird now. But I'm going to follow the angle as I see it now rather than try and correct it for what it was. And that means that it's going to be like this, and I'm going to incorporate, you know, part of the screen, the laptop in over here now. I hope this is making sense and I'm not just going crazy. Could be either, really. I'm going to add in a little bit of the shading here. Not super interested in getting it perfect again. And again, if you were doing this the proper way, you'd be using charcoal instead of paint. In fact, you'd be using oil paint because acrylic paint wasn't invented for another 10 years or so. It's going to be hard to do analytic cubism in 3D because it is so explicitly two-dimensional. That's entirely the point, is that they had gotten tired of doing three-dimensional art, you know, doing art as like, oh, that's a such and such. And a lot of that I feel like had to do with the way that the camera had influenced the art world. If you don't have to paint things the way they are, Artcade, that's pretty good. Artcade sounds good. Landscapes are free enough for a DOS mouse. Yeah, it might be pretty hard with a DOS mouse. And I might have been a little bit too adventurous by trying to introduce this to you guys. But, you know, I'm still learning to be a teacher, so I'm going to be implementing random stuff every now and then. Maybe tilt the skull like so. So that way I get a little bit of downward angle on it. And so now I've got this skull going this way. So that means that it's like... And then I might add in another skull kind of over here. I don't know. I need to fill out this area a bit more. Picasso stayed fairly central with his work, whereas Brock would kind of do everything. You know, go from all the angles. I just tried skipping to the finished painting. I'm new to live stream. Yeah, it's a little bit weird. It's gonna take a bit to like get used to. So going from the mouth, from the nose there, it goes straight down. It's super weird to be thinking about things in like this fifth dimensional way that they were doing it. But this is what they were going on about. This is what they were trying to accomplish. It's what we're doing now. Galaxy brain kind of memes, you know? I'd be actually interested to see what you turn up with, Zarketh. The bottom of your object's gonna be really hard to do. What is your object, if you mind me asking? So I've got like the teeth coming in, and I'm still trying to like correct based on the angle that I'm looking at it from. And that's not quite right. But they do a lot of still lives like this. So when you go and look at an analytic cubism piece, understand that what they were doing was, you know, this. Super weird. It's been the direction that I've been taking my art recently. Not explicitly analytic cubism, but I've been trying to learn from what they were doing back in the day and try and implement it to my work now. Sometimes that's not possible. And I'm definitely not the best teacher, but we'll see. Dice held in a clear container. The bottom isn't clear though. That's okay. I would actually encourage you to try it anyway. It's gonna be a kind of weird, boring angle from the bottom, but that's okay. Like flatness and kind of weird, what you would normally assume is boring, is kind of the name of the game, so you might actually come out ahead with that. Let's see, what other angles have I not done? I've done that, I've done that. I want to add something over here, because that area is really vacant, don't you think? I could do like the... I could get around and behind the back of the head here. I'm realizing now that this might have been a little bit advanced for newbies, but also I encourage you not to like I mean, like I am not keeping perfect to the way it looks. We're kind of like messing around with it, and I'm obviously adding my own twist onto this. So if your dice got all mixed up because you pulled them out of the container and it doesn't look perfect, this isn't like a traditional still life where that matters. I feel like this looks too much like a skull, and we'll fix that in a minute. You know, obviously, like in the guitar example we saw, that's fine, but we're gonna mess with it a little bit. Straighten out some angles, round off some more. Like this area I'm liking because it's nice and round, so we're gonna keep that like circular like that. My skull has a flat bit right there because it's a cheap Halloween decoration, but I use it pretty extensively in a lot of my work. I'm going to take this angle I see from the back of the laptop there. I'm going to work it in over here. Because I feel like this area needs to be worked up a bit more. This paint's still a little too wet to be touched, but I'm rushing because I'm panicking. We're doing experiments. We're doing, you know, different things. We're trying to, I don't want to do all of the lessons that everyone always starts with, like, oh, let's do a still life. Ooh. There are a billion lessons like that on the internet. I want to talk about art history as it relates to video games and as it relates to my interests, so I hope that that works. Alright, so now we have a grounding for what we're doing. I'm going to turn off the camera again. I feel like we're in a good spot to start this. I might clean up some of these lines, make them a little bit more solid. But I feel like that's a good start to a painting. This looks alright, right? I'm going to give everyone a bit to, like, catch up, maybe do theirs. But this is the underpainting. Also, this paint still needs to dry. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about outside of Analytic Cubism as it is also how to manage line weight, how to manage your brush and use it in different ways, and try and, you know, really concentrate on how you're using your brush. Because that's one of the hallmarks of a good artist, is someone who knows how to, like, use the brush. It's not like a pencil where you can kind of hold it however. I've seen people hold their brush or their pencil like this. It's weird to me. I don't get how you do that. The angle at which this is very obvious, but the angle at which your brush touches the canvas changes the line that you get. And so when you sweep, when you do like a line or a swoop like that, depending on how you drag your brush depends on how that's going to look. It's easier if I have like a bigger brush, but you know, if I bring the brush like this, it's going to make that angle, right? But I could do a very similar angle by doing that, where I just work along the edge. We're going to be talking about that a lot. So for this, I do want to polish off some of these edges. Some of this is a little bit too fuzzy from the way I drew it. I'm going to try and sketch it in a little bit better. Again, if we were doing this the proper Analytic Cubism way, we would be using charcoal. Charcoal mixes with oil paint in really annoying ways, and it's kind of an extra step that you're going to have to learn. So instead of doing that, we're doing acrylic, so that way we can actually finish this painting today. Okay. So I'm going to darken in these lines real quick. Turn on the camera again. And if there's any lines that you feel like you need to catch up on, anything that you need to do to fix what you've got, feel free to. But one of the things I'm going to do is I'm not going to like try and round out the edges as perfect as that skull is. I'm going to kind of try and let the angles be whatever they end up being. Have some confidence in like your ability to brush, even if you're not good at art yet. Just do one stroke. Another thing that beginner artists do is they do little tiny like like they keep like reworking the same line and it gets all funky and awful. Make a decision, try and get the line down. It's sort of like driving. If you're gonna like merge into a new lane, all right, Mafa. If you're gonna mark down a line, mark down a line. I'm gonna just go for this line here, and that's not quite perfect as what I wanted, but it's close enough. And eventually you'll get better at it. But trying to do the line, how late am I? Not very. You're pretty early on in the stream. You can still see the white of the canvas, so you're not too bad. So we're doing that kind of thing. Now, I haven't tried adding letters into one that's like this before, so we'll see how that turns out. It may get lost in everything else that we're doing, but that's what we're doing anyway. Are you dry yet? More or less. Okay. How's everyone doing? Is that a Flips copyright mark on the right? Oh. Oh, weird. No, but I can see how you'd get that. That's my lamp. I'm not drawing the whole thing, because we don't have to. I encourage that wholeheartedly, 87 Morpheus. If this ends up going badly, but you tried something new, that's probably better than you trying to do, I don't know, what you always do. This is one of the reasons that I'm attacking this sort of style, is because I need to, you know, push myself to do something different, and I'm getting stuck too close to realism, and I'm not comfy with it. So instead, I'm like, okay, who had talked about realism and photography in the way that I'm talking about it? And, you know, Picasso during Analytic Cubism kind of did. So, we're going to be going that direction. So, I'm going to get a little bit of yellow. And if you did this one versus the last one, let me know how this went. Like, not necessarily like, but like how the lesson went. Whether or not you felt like it was easy to understand. Because I want to know whether or not I'm putting things out there that are maybe outside of people's ability to do stuff. Just yet. I'm beginning to realize that I might have done that with this one. So I'm going to get some yellow. Just pure cadmium yellow medium hue. I hope that you bought the hue, because otherwise you just spent a whole bunch of money on stuff. This, I feel like, is the answer to your question, Charlie. You're asking, is Aimless trying to do art, no goal, no idea, even worth the time? I don't like abstract art that doesn't have some basis in reality. I feel like the best art that's done, I can actually bring up an example of this. This is from Modran, if you give me a second to find it. You can see the evolution of Modran through his first painting here, and then as he extended outwards into other things. He based a lot of his art on natural forms. So you've got the top left one where it looks very much like a tree, then the middle top one where it looks less like a tree, and then the one after that, less like a tree, but based on the last one, you can kind of see how it would be a tree. And then the bottom left one, you're like, that's not a tree. But if I told you it was the same subject matter that he was basing his work on, like having a lot of detail going on all in little spots, as if there were branches there, kind of works out to what he eventually was known for. I feel like the natural world is naturally beautiful, and you can use it as a basis to push yourself in different directions and get to really bizarre stuff that makes abstract art look a lot better. But that being said, also just like messing around with line weight, getting your lines good is important, you know? And some of that is just whatever you feel like doing as far as art. So I'm going to be taking some yellow, and this is one of the most crucial parts of this. I'm going to turn on the recording again. When you're doing the brush strokes for the rest of this painting, we're going to be doing pop, 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 like short little like literally we're not going to be doing large strokes. Every stroke is going to be like ½ inch to ¼ inch long. I don't know if you guys can see what I was doing over there, so I'm going to do it a little bit over there. But you see that mark? Does that work? Let me try and move the camera so you guys can see what I just did. You see that mark there that I did? Just like bunk. Bip. Bip. Little bips all over the place. Like that. That's what we're going for. All of your strokes should not only be left to right, but all about that length. And that's going to get you the aesthetic that we're looking for here. Let me get you guys back into your spot. Lots of bips, bups, that kind of thing. So I'm going to quickly do a little bips and bops as I bring out the yellow in that top corner. And like I said, because this yellow is super cheap and transparent, the brown that we put in the first place is going to show through. But not in other places because we didn't put it there. And so by doing that, we're going to have parts of the painting that glow and parts that don't. This is kind of a cheaty sort of method, but it's really the only way that I understand how to use this paint. Because I'm cheap and don't use really expensive paint, because I'm broke as hell. I think that's about right. So this paint, it's going to be a little bit harder to tell that we're doing the little bip bip bips, but it's important to do them anyway. Really try and control that you're doing bip bip bip. I'm also doing a little bit of twist every now and then at the end, because there's paint on both sides of my brush, but I'm not doing the twist while it's touching the canvas. And every now and then my paint will start to run out and I need to get a little bit more. Obviously, if you have more expensive paint, it'll be chunkier. It'll work. This is a very slow method of painting, as Alondro pointed out. But one of the important things you need to know about art is, especially doing it, is the line that you make and the speed that you make it and the work that you're doing it. Ever considered using a reference in reverse, not basing it on it, but doing it completely opposite? I have no idea what you're talking about there. Your quality of your work is going to be determined on how much time you spend on any given spot. There is a limited, there's like a diminishing return on that, but I feel like this really slow, sluggish style of doing art is super important for people to learn when they're just first starting. So that way you get used to just like, you gotta make some work. You gotta be doing some stuff. You know? Like, it's gonna take you a while to do a masterpiece. Alright, so I'm gonna start implementing some colors from my thing. Art doesn't necessarily have to be slow, but you don't need to go too fast. You need to be doing it at the speed that it needs to be done at. So I'm gonna take some of the colors that I'm seeing on my skull. If you can mix any of the colors that you have to get to some approximate of whatever you're painting, go ahead and do so. I'm going to be taking that brown there, and I'm going to be adding it, and I'm going to be shading out this area like here. And again, even up to the line, we're going to be painting. And we're going to reinforce that line here in a minute. Kind of like using water as a reference for a desert. You will probably do okay in art. It's starting to come together. It's harder to see from a distance, but it's starting to come together on my screen. And I'm going to start bringing in that yellow. And by getting them really close to each other, it's going to start mixing them. We're going to do some wet on wet sort of painting here. Keep in mind where these black lines that you created earlier are, because we're going to reinforce them later. I'm going to use a little bit of that gray or this fleshy color that we used earlier. I'm going to build it into here as well. I don't know if I totally care for how that turned out, but we're going to be doing a lot of layers. So if you ever get anything in the process of doing this and it looks, you know, bad or dumb to you, go ahead and just trudge on through, keep it going. We'll worry about it later. And it might come together at some other point in a way that you didn't expect it to. I'll take a little bit of the black we made. I'm going to do a little bit of this stuff right here, the inside of the skull. So there is a shadow there. I'm not too interested in exactly copying it, more just like referencing it. Three-dimensionality is not important here. In fact, quite the opposite. We're trying to be as flat as possible. And this brush stroke is going to make it flat. You know, we're using a 14 by 11 canvas. This brush stroke is going to make it very solid. When you're doing like a traditional painting, you want to paint with the curves of the thing. So if I were painting an actual skull, I would go like line and line, and these would all go parallel with the edge of the thing, so that way it would get this illusion that there's some depth there, and go with the curve of whatever I'm trying to paint. For the sake of this, though, we're trying to flatten the image out as much as possible, which means not doing that. It's sort of like doing pixel art, because this is monotonous, slow work that each individual stroke isn't much, but it adds up to something, and it gives it a really nice texture, something really pretty looking that we can enjoy. It's prettiness through a lot of colors that are like traditionally not considered pretty, like brown is generally considered one of the most ugly colors. And that's also something that I've been thinking about recently. In my own work, my own stuff that I've been trying to do is like, I don't know. How do the colors that I'm using affect the mood and the subject matter? Because the color inherently has meaning to not just like individuals, but like as cultures as a whole. And so I can really inform what I'm doing based on the colors. It's like basic art theory kind of stuff, but I'm really starting to try and get into that and go, okay, I can paint anything in a bunch of different colors, and depending on what colors I use depends on the mood that is reflected by it. My painting's going to involve a lot of white and gray and brown, because what I'm painting is those colors. But eventually, we're going to just completely stop looking at that. But for the next little bit, I'm going to be looking at it and trying to imitate things from it and build it into the painting. Yours is going to look different than mine, obviously, because you're using a different subject matter. And then we're looking at the other side of the skull over here. And then the top part of the head. And the top part of the head gets closer to a white up here. And there's a lot of white on this skull. It's like bone white. Duh. I might save some of the white until later because it's going to end up being more poppy. It's going to look cooler if I end up using white last, because other paint will go over other stuff, and then the white will just kind of be mixed in with a whole bunch of other colors. It'll just be kind of like whatever at that point. I'm going to go back and reinforce some of these colors here in a second. These lines that I made. And this yellow needs to be reinforced quite heavily because it's super, super light. So where can I take more? This is kind of like a cool blue on the inside of the lamp that you guys can't see. How do you even scientifically prove something's ugly? I don't think you can. I don't think that's really an objective thing. This is a very interesting point of history as far as art goes, because they were so concerned about like what the camera is doing to the art medium. It said a lot about what the culture was at the time. You know, culture is really just like, how does society view itself? And so it's interesting for an artist to go, I don't want to do anything like photography, because the end result is something that's too similar to what's already out there. So what he's saying is that the culture has a lot to do with photography right now. Culture, art, video games, music, all that are going to be largely influenced by how society views itself, and how society views itself is going to change what artists do. Like how I said I was going to stop using white, and then I'm adding more white and white and white. I don't think there's a scientific way of proving something being ugly, but I think there's certain things that, like, in general, people agree is ugly. Like, opinions are not scientific. You can factually say, a large group of people believe this opinion. You know? 72% of people believe this. You know? That's a fact. You can't do that with opinions. Like, this opinion is accurate. You can do, you know, a lot of people believe this opinion, but that doesn't mean that it's right. Like, a lot of people believe that the world is flat, which is dumb because we've been to space and we know it's not. But, you know, lizardmen or whatever the reason is, you know. So I've decided I'm not going to put yellow in that corner. I'm going to actually add in some white because I like the way the wall in my apartment looks, and so I'm going to add the wall there. And a lot of these gradients are going to come into play to make this look super cool. But using this really monotonous, repetitive stroke, I know you hate it, but it's going to be the way to actually get this the way you want it to be. Like, art is so much about this. People are like, man, I wish I could do that. And it's like, yeah, it's going to take practice. It's sort of the discipline of art is what a lot of this is going to cover. So you may not like the result. And if you're watching the VOD, go ahead and skip to the end. See how this works. But the discipline of this is what makes it look cool. You know? I could I could get this brush and just start slamming stuff in left, right, and the center, and it's not going to look right, you know? I'm going to be using yellow in spots where I feel like it needs to be brightened up, or where I feel like the color is a little bit boring, or I don't have that color, you know? They would actually go after and try and get specific, you know, the whatever colors, but they were doing like the dullest, most earthy versions of what have you. And this, if I recall correctly, was kind of a white. Just gonna get all this white out of my system. That gets us that. Alright. I'm gonna get this black in. because that is black. I didn't bring black paint with me, but I'm going to use this here. Just reinforce that line real quick. And actually, I'm betting that this is all... Nah, it's still a little bit tacky. We'll come back to that in a minute. This is my laptop here. And get this guy in. He's a darker color like that. How many skulls are in it? One. Basically. There's this one viewed from several different angles. Oh, you're answering Charlie. Skip to the end of the VOD. Why is he wearing clown wig? It's the third step to this painting. Everyone go ahead and break out the clown mask that you bought. It was in the supply list. I didn't photograph it, so hopefully you guys got it and didn't just ignore what I was saying in the video. But you're going to need to put on your clown nose now. It's crucially important to abstract cubism. Analytic cubism, I should say. There's a little bit of a sheen on the laptop, so I'm going to try and implement some of the colors from the sheen in. It's okay if you paint over some stuff, because we're gonna fix it. In fact, I'm gonna stop talking about we're gonna fix it. We're gonna do the thing. Where do I put the clown nose? Oh, you need to put the clown nose on your face, because that's where clown noses go. It's not gonna actually show up in the finished work, but this is something that Picasso did. He wore a clown mask all of the time. The photographs where he's not are staged. So anyway. I'm going to reinforce those lines. So I knew that there's this line from earlier. So I'm going to paint over what I just did in any of the areas where it went over the lines that I was working on. So there's a line here. Where did it go? Now it's back. Same here. This line, he's back. You're going to do this probably about 8 or 9 times through the course of this painting. Repainting over where you've screwed up and painted over it. So it's important to go ahead and try and paint directly to the line. So that way you can just, get those colors back. Because this makes it so much flatter and blockier. Because, things don't actually have outlines in nature. That paint is still white. Or wet. Things don't have outlines in nature. That's not natural. We're intentionally not trying to make a natural looking painting here. We're trying to make something a little bit artsier. A little bit that understands that it's paint. This is a painting about paint. This is how you paint exclusively to not make an illusion, but to make paint. Can I add colors that are not in the subject? Yes. But I would recommend keeping it to fairly dull colors. Now, obviously, when you're reinforcing these lines, you don't have to worry about the bips, but for the rest of it, you do. This is why you need a bit more of that black than you'd think. Line confidence is still something. Things don't have outlines. Things naturally do not have outlines. The range of, like, the edge of that skull, you know where the edge of that is because of the color shift between the edge of the skull and the background behind it. This is not a painting that tries to trick you into thinking it's reality. You don't go, oh, wow, I thought that really was a skull. I didn't realize that wasn't a photograph. If someone says that, like if someone goes, "Wow, I didn't know that was I thought that was a photograph." If someone says that about your analytic cubism piece, you've done it wrong. Like, it should be very obvious that you are not painting, or this is not a photograph, because the texture work that you're putting in each one of these little tiny bit strokes is gonna be informing them that that's not the way the world works. Things have much smoother lines than this in nature, you know? You can learn a lot about realism by doing something that's not realism. Or maybe they just have messed up eyes. That's entirely possible too. So I'm going to add more yellow, because I like yellow. I've had a real kick about yellow recently, hence a lot of my paintings. So I'm going to be adding it here. The speed at which you're doing this is gonna make this take a while longer. But I'm liking how mine is turning out. I don't know how y'all's are turning out. I want to get a little bit further before we start sharing our work. But I'm probably not going to be able to finish my painting today. Because this is a time-consuming sort of thing. That's okay. It's a little bit zen, I guess. I'm not huge into the, like, zen thing. You know. My dad is super into, like, the mindfulness sort of things. Stuff like that. That was really never what I was about. Not that I don't care about being mindful or being in the moment, but, a lot of that ends up being, like, I don't know, very nihilistic. And I prefer my nihilism to be a little bit, I don't know, happier? Like, nothing matters, yeah! Sort of nihilism, rather than the, more depressing versions of it. Not really a nihilist. Someone described me as an existentialist the other day, and maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't know what I am. I'm really just a dude who talks continuously to fill dead air. So it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. Talked about this in a few streams recently. I really have no idea what I'm talking about most of the time. But you'll notice a lot of the texture and a lot of the cool parts of this painting are because of the bips. Is it annoying? Yes. But it is so much nicer looking. I may just work a little bit while I shut up. But if you guys have questions, feel free to throw them out in chat. This is what we're going to be doing for the next little bit. Is bips. Let me see how long we've been going. We've been going for an hour. I am Rev. That sounds right. That's who I am. This camera has about 2 hours worth of battery. I need to buy another battery for it. But that costs money. And I'm not really able to do that right now. So another reason that we added in this here is in with analytic cubism, the center part, at least as far as Picasso is concerned, is like a lot more bright and detailed. And so by dulling the outside edges like that, it makes this interior part, no matter what we do to it, going to be a lot more in focus, a lot more interesting, a lot brighter. I'm painting over my lines a little bit here, but again, because the yellow paint is so transparent, it doesn't matter too much. I'm going to start bringing some of this brown out and into this yellow over here. After a while, you're going to stop looking at your subject entirely. And in fact, that's what they ended up doing. When they moved on to doing synthetic cubism, there was no subject matter at all. They just were painting stuff. They were making stuff without a reference. Because they had learned at that point those lines and those sort of things. It looks good, don't get me wrong, but I do really like the way that Analytic Cubism looks. It has a nice texture to it. It's sensical to a degree. But it's not real. Am I gonna stream Worlds Adrift again? Probably. I needed to wait until Twitch paid me to see whether, because I didn't want to like do another stream of it and then go, oh well, this must be the stream that you're counting. But they paid me almost immediately, and it was a decent check. So I signed up for another one of those, and I'll probably do another one of those streams soon. But the Twitch bounty system is super helpful. I would say I got paid fairly equivalently to what I get paid in a week at my day job for doing that one Twitch bounty. The program's still in beta, so I don't want to like quit my day job because of it. But if I can keep that up, that would help. There are other things that I need to do. I mean, it's never going to quite replace it. There are other things that I've been thinking about doing to help make it so I can stream more, do more art streams, more art stuff, and more just, you know, content that you guys like without, you know, having to go live in a box. But I have extreme fears of doing any sort of changes to my channel. And so I would say about a majority of this morning was me fretting about that. But instead of talking about that, instead of fretting about that, we're going to do art. Because art's supposed to be therapeutic, says someone who's never done art before, who doesn't do art professionally, who doesn't have to depend on it for money. I think that's one of the biggest myths of art, is that art is therapeutic. If you're just doing it for funsies, sure. But if you're doing it as a day job, you know, if you have like a sprained wrist or something, you're out of commission, you're not making money. And it's not like you can just, I don't know, make money other ways. You're just kind of out of luck. You're not making money. And if you need to make money in order to, you know, pay rent, generally speaking, you have to pay rent, you're going to be in a rough spot there for a bit. All the more reason that you should do the stretches and the stuff that I don't teach you. Good night, Inkblot. One of the things that I've found that's effective in this style is slowly working from one color to another. So down here I've got browns and blacks. I'm going to start working the white this way, so that way by the time we get about to the nostril hole, we'll have white. So I'm adding in yellow now, and then the yellow will eventually turn into white, probably right around here-ish. And it'll start turning more and more white as I go. And that gradient is super interesting to look at, but it still makes the thing really flat. These yellows are probably too bright to be using in a painting like this, but I don't care because I like the way it looks. To do proper analytic cubism, you have to make a lot of concessions. And a lot of the concessions I decided to not make for the sake of this stream. You know, sand being one of them. We don't have any sand on our painting. Brock liked to throw a bunch of sand on his painting as a substrate. I figured that would be a bit messy, and, you know, not using oil, like I said, ends up being a much quicker, easier way of doing this style of painting. On the camera, they look dark. It's like a medium yellow, but yellow itself is such a bright, vibrant color. I really feel like my next step as an artist is to read Kandinsky, who did a lot of talk about color. I've been reading a lot about Alan Moore recently, the guy who made Watchmen, and that dude is absolutely insane, but he's got some interesting ideas when it comes to culture and stuff like that, and it was interesting for me to mess around with like how that ends up working with my work. He is also a snake wizard, so that's a thing. Not something really I'm going to implement in my own life. Is this going on your website? It depends on how it turns out, but I'm thinking it might. Let's take a second to stretch and just like relax. I'm going to turn off the camera. The camera turning off is probably a good sign that we need to stop for a minute. If you can, and it's not too much of an issue for you, try and get up and walk around. I'm going to be taking a second to just kind of like relax, let the paint dry. If you're comfortable in sharing what you've made, tweet it to me real quick. It'll be a good way for us to all like kind of stop working for a sec and you know, maybe provide some critiques. I don't really care if you're doing this project or if you're working on a different project. Go ahead and tweet it at me. It's at Rev_Scarecrow. And just show me what you're working on. Show me what you've done so far if you're comfortable in doing so. And we'll look at it as a group and try and help each other out. I feel like one of the most helpful things you can do as an artist is to actually give critiques and get critiques. Hopefully you say things other than, that looks like crap. If you're saying that in a critique, you're bad at it. I'm in bed. I'm not gonna take a walk. You're fine. Can I tweet my Hot Pockets? Boy, I wish you meant actual Hot Pockets. I have a feeling you don't mean actual Hot Pockets. Oh, cool. So I'm seeing one right now from Inkblot. I'm going to check that out. Oh, you got something really bizarre going. I like it. Let me show you what they're working on. And I see that you're fighting with the way the colors look as well. That yellow is super transparent, isn't it? But already you have something that would make Picasso go, whoa, that's cool. If I can get it to show up. Looks like it's going to take a sec. Come on now. Show the... There it is. Check that out. That's a cool color that you got going on. That's a cool thing you got going. I like how much paint you're actually adding to the canvas. Ooh. Whoa. Okay, I did something weird there. Hold on one sec. Digital painting, I feel like, is a very hard thing to do with this style because a lot of it is paint talking about paint. And that's kind of hard to do when you're not using paint. I'm interested to see the people who have decided to try and do like 3D art with this, because that's going to get super weird. Come on, work with me. Pop up. There we go. It's going to have to deal. Alright. So that's the one from Inkblot. I'm liking where you're going with it so far. You said, here's my work in progress for the night. Might need to use something larger than a 1-inch pin as a reference. I think the fact that you decided to go with a 1-inch pin is super interesting because that's going to come up with some really weird stuff. It looks like it's got eyes. I like it. Para says, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. You got the colors right. If you're using paint, I would recommend using... not the spray paint tool. Where is it? Paint. The tool that you probably want to use if you're using paint to do this. Where is it? It's in the brushes. It's I think it's this one. Yeah, that's probably the one you want to be using. You could probably get away with that. It's going to be a little bit of a different thing, and then you can do, you know, maybe the ink or something to do the outlines for whatever you're doing. And you can, you know, maybe spend a little bit more time on the, yeah. Anyway. It's harder to do it in paint. But this way you can get a little bit of that color mixing going. It's hard to do with MS Paint. So I see your struggle there. I wonder what you're working on. Like, what's your... oh, you were doing the dice, weren't you? You're using Krita? See if you got something that's got a little bit of opacity like that. Then we got this one from Sky Morpheus. Looks like you're working with a knife. Try and get the other angles in the knife. It looks like you got a little bit of that going. Maybe throw some up here in the top corner. Can you see where my mouse is? You can't. Maybe up in the top right corner here or so. Otherwise, I'm liking it. I'm liking what you got going. It looks like you got a little bit of that going because that's like the hinge on the inside of the knife. I got a very similar knife. But I feel like you're heading in the right direction. Kato says, here's my Cubist lion along with Procreate. That's super weird. So you're viewing a lion from like 8 different directions, and so it gets like this weird like beast from yeah. I like your demonic lion. It's cool. Probably shouldn't have used a stuffed animal. It's gonna be harder to do a stuffed animal, but I like that you're trying with this. It's cool. Let's see, what else do we got? It looks like those are the ones we have. Oh, Rev, the paint is in the lamp is from your first stream. Sorry about that. But it looks like he's trying to do this sort of look, but with... Huh. Doing colored pencils is going to make this a lot harder. But I feel like you can at least work on like form as far as where you're putting those black lines down. And that's coming along. If you have a clean piece of paper, you probably will have an easier time with it. Having those ruled paper lines are going to make it harder on you. I feel like that's all the art that we got going for right now. I've arrived for realsies. Alright. Hello, Luigi guy. I've seen a lot of stretches on how you're supposed to stretch when you're doing art. I don't do any of them, and I'm probably gonna become crippled because of it. You're fine, Alondro. You're very fine. Don't worry about it. Um, okay. I'm gonna reinforce some of my black lines now. We're gonna go back and do that. I like the direction that you guys are going, and I'm encouraged to see that you guys are you're trying to follow along and do it, even though it's a super weird, not traditional art school kind of thing to be teaching. Because I was a little bit hesitant to see how this was going to turn out. I wasn't sure if people were going to be mad that I was using Analytic Cubism, because who wants to do Analytic Cubism? The answer is me. I want to do Analytic Cubism, and I want to talk about it. I had a line here, didn't I? Looks like I did. Stopping at something there. Someone asked the other day, how do you develop style when it comes to art? I feel like style naturally comes from what you're attracted to and your influences and just your own personal taste in color, you know? I really like boring colors. I really like brown and yellow and red and those like colors that people don't usually use, like white and black. I think those are super cool. Um, and so that means if I want to make something that's like, you know, cool and people like, I'm gonna have to like really work to try and develop something. But also it means that, you know, I'm gonna use whatever colors I feel like, because that's how you art. Is, you know, you ought to do whatever inspires you. Nothing wrong with doing art that gets the bills paid. I've seen a lot of people do furry stuff just to, you know, pay bills. Nothing wrong with that. Art is an incredibly necessary but mistreated talent, which means that sometimes you got to go outside your comfort zone to do something that's a little bit more sellable. But right now I'm going to be focusing on trying to do what I want to learn how to do. And this isn't going to be the end of where I'm going with my art. If you look at Picasso over his entire, you know, time as an artist, he did some weird stuff, dude. Like some really weird stuff. But by the end of it, he ended up coming up with something that was distinctly his. He's synonymous with art at this point. If you say Picasso, you mean art. You probably mean some weird art, but I'm hoping that by doing it like this, by actually learning what he went through, that maybe we can appreciate why he's so important and what he was on about. And also just what abstract artists have to do in order to make something good. Because there's a lot of people that go, oh, I'm an abstract artist, and then they do something awful. And it's just like, yeah, that doesn't mean you're good, though. And what's objectively good is, again, there's no such thing. Forget who said it, but someone said that if it looks like art, then it looks like someone else's art. Which is kind of the problem I'm having right now, I guess. So if it looks like art, this looks like art. And it looks like his art because I am mimicking his style here to learn. But I'm going to incorporate some of this, like the brush strokes. You know, I've tried to do this before, way back in the day. Well, not way back in the day. A little while back I did that painting that I believe is still available, Rot Skull, on my website. And the objective there was like, what happens if I do this brushstroke, the bip bip bips, on something that's not, you know, this? And the answer is something that I'm not too terribly proud of, but it was worth experimenting with and seeing how it would turn out. Every now and then you're going to get something that you're not really proud of when it comes to art. And so if you're feeling that with the painting you're working on right now, don't worry, that's a sign that you're a good artist, because you're trying to figure out what's wrong with it, hopefully, rather than you're just beating yourself up. The line between a good artist and a bad painting, you know, is going to be whether or not you take it as a learning experience or whether or not you just beat yourself up about it. Every good artist only has like a handful of good paintings in them. And so that just means you got to get all the bad ones out. It's sort of like a roll of a dice. If a six-sided dice can roll a 1 or a 4 or a 2 or a 3 or a 6, what have you, you know, it's random, but you can like kind of work through the randomness by rolling a lot of dice. And then you're going to get a few sixes in there. Is it someone else's art if you did it? That's an interesting question. Spiritually, to some degree, I think you're gonna have an issue with like this is very much my own art. I'm not looking at a Picasso while I'm doing it, but I am mimicking what they did during this time period. So is this Picasso painting or is this me painting? I'm trying to learn. You even saw it with Modran. He was copying, you know, or at least influenced by Picasso and a few of those. I'm going to be doing the same thing. So any recommendations for pencil or paper and digital routine practice? I'm super new to this stuff. I ought to have a video about just like resources that are free. I've been working on compiling a list of all the different things that I use because I kind of forget that I use them. I just go and do them. So recently I've just been writing that down. Once I feel like I've gotten all of them, I'll make a video that's explicitly just that, like free artist tools that everyone can use. That'll help. But as far as practice, I would recommend like going and maybe learning a little bit of art history. No, it's super dry. But like, you know, hopefully by me bringing this up, you learned something, and maybe you can implement some of the stuff that we're doing here today. Like maybe you want to make your paintings more flat. Or you realize that Picasso was wrong and paintings should be more realistic in 3D. Why? You know? I'm going to make this green. So to make green, a lot of people make the mistake of mixing like blue and yellow. That's wrong. That gets you a green. It just doesn't get you a lot of greens. It gets you a very specific green. In order to get other greens, you're going to have to mix other things. But yellow is important. So we can use yellow and black in order to get olive. So I'm going to add the black that we made earlier. And you can do this with actual like Mars black as well. But I'm going to take some of that black. I feel like I'm all over the place today. As I said, I didn't sleep too well. Arcade is one of those things that I'm super enjoying making, but it is like, I would say more stressful because it's more important to me. If I do it wrong, I feel worse about it than if I do a bad stream. And so obviously the bad stream worries come into play as well when I'm doing an arcade stream, but it is what it is. Anyway, we're mixing the yellow and the black in order to get green. And we're getting a very specific green. We're getting like olive green rather than like... forest green or Link's hat green or whatever green. Gets us a better green. I think it's a little bit more interesting. I feel like a lot of artists feel like they draw better when they're drunk. That's also led to a lot of artists dying prematurely, so I don't know. I try and stay away from really all drugs. I'm not straight edge by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just, it's a time sink. If I'm not sober, I can't work. I find my work suffers when I'm drinking. And so I personally find it to be detrimental. I have a few canvases that I did while drinking, and they are not going up on the website. They are bad. I also made it a general rule for myself that I won't stream and drink at the same time. I feel like it makes for less interesting streams because there's nothing really more annoying than drunk people. And annoying is not really what I'm aiming for with a stream. But yeah, if you get something wrong, just accept it, you know? Like I said, like Picasso is probably, like, he was probably at that level when he was 15 because he had nothing else to do with his time. You know, there was no internet, there were no video games, you know? You hear about all these, you know, authors and writers and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, they wrote 10 billion books by the time they were 2. And it's like, yeah, because, like, what do you do for fun in, like, 18 whatever? Play with Hoopstick. You have, like, one toy and it's a monkey that you put a coin in it and then it does a little flip. Or you wind it up and it makes barking sounds or something. Like, how boring is that? Now, we got, like, the internet, which makes learning art easier. Like, if you're, you know, not particularly rich, you can still learn how to do art, you know? Which is cool. That's nice. It means that there's more art. But it also means that there are more distractions for artists. There's so many other things you could be doing with your time. So many other things you could be doing aside from art right now. It's part of that discipline again. It's just, you know, deciding to go do art instead of, you know, going out drinking with friends or what have you. Sometimes that's bad. So you need to have, like, things in your life happen. If you don't ever do anything, then you'll never have anything worth talking about in your art. And that's one of the worst things, is when I talked about the 4 things that every artist needs, you know, I talked about, like, you know, the technical skill, and I talked about the creative skill. And I've seen a lot of people who are technically talented, but they are really, really boring people. And so they just paint, like, here's my cat. I love my cat because my cat is cat. It's like, listen, dude, I get it. Like, I'm all about cats too, but, like, what are you talking about? Like, why should I look at your art? What is it about? What is it for? You don't have to work that out just yet. You don't have to be anything too hoity-toity. You know, during the same time period that we're talking about with Picasso, the Buffalo Bill Wild West show was a thing, and he was super into it. Someone messaged him, a woman messaged him, right, saying that she was an art curator, and her last name was Bill, right? And I don't know if this is a joke or not, but he asked whether or not she had any relationship to Buffalo Bill. It's hard to tell with artists sometimes whether or not they're joking or if they're being serious. My point is that, like, I don't know what my point is. That's my point. Generally speaking, I don't know what my point is today. Skulls for the Momo throne? Did I start the canvas again? Alright, okay, I did. I have to fix some of those later once that paint's dry. It's bugging me right now, though. Same with over here. That's still wet, but I painted over some of that, so I want to fix it. But I can't because it's not done. Like it's still wet, so I can't really paint. I like that, but I need to fix it. I want more black here. You can make these choices sort of randomly at this point. What was I going to say? Art used to be, back in the day, way back in the day, Renaissance, stuff like that, used to be entirely for the purpose of, like, state propaganda and for religious purposes. The only reason you'd ever do art was for that. And eventually a guy ended up painting some fireworks. And it was such a big deal that he got sued over it. And they're like, what are you doing? And he's like, listen, I'm just doing art for art's sake. That was probably the most important thing when it came to art history. That is going to be something you'll have to learn on your own as far as art history knowledge, but that ethos of art for art's sake, that there's no point in it, that's just, look, I made an art, it's pretty, isn't it? Was revolutionary. It's kind of crazy to think about now because we just sort of expect that people are doing art for the sake of, like, oh, what's the meaning behind it? What was he thinking? Why is he doing it that way? What's the composition for? You know? Why those lines there? Back in the day, like, the reason for all that was because Jesus. Or because glory to the empire. Or what have you, you know? Look at this cool rich dude who sponsored me to paint him. Alright, good night. You sleep well. It's super crazy to think about art was at a point where it had no point outside of just establishing who is in what pecking order. But again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about culture. The entire point behind culture was, or is, to be a mirror upon itself. Like, what are we? What is society? What are we about, and why do we do what we do? You know? And sometimes the answer is, we don't know, or because we like to party, you know? That's why you see a lot of the same things be shocking in art, because it's kind of what culture's about at the point, you know? It doesn't really matter who's making it, whether it be, you know, some guy smothering ketchup on himself in an art gallery somewhere, or if it's Beyonce singing a song about, you know, how, you know, all the single ladies, or what have you. It's a reflection of the time, and a reflection of what culture is saying about itself at that point. I feel like Beyonce does a better job at that. I'm not a huge fan of Beyonce, but I feel like Beyonce is more on the nose than, say, some dude covering himself in ketchup, completely naked. Or, for instance, Vaseline and crawling around on the walls like a fly, which is an actual thing that someone did, and it's super weird, and I'm not a fan of it, because I feel like it's a bit silly, and probably something that a rich guy would do. Everyone's supposed to ooh and ah and go, oh, what does it mean? Maybe it means nothing, and the guy's just weird. Have you ever done pointillism? I'm not sure if I'm about that level of self-abuse. If you think this is bad, guys, pointillism's a lot more hardcore when it comes to this beep, bip, 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 bip. You know? You might just go, bop, and just go from there. And that's your painting. Like a bunch of little points that are bop, 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 bop. It's brutal, dude. I used to think this was brutal. And it's pretty bad on your shoulder and stuff, because you got to be doing a lot of repetitive action. So what is it? Repetitive injury strain kind of stuff. All the more reason that you need to like be taking care of yourself. Carpal tunnel. What is pointillism? Bop. It's about how the art is formed, not about like the spiritual statement behind it when it comes to pointillism. It's not like it's pointless. It's like it's just a bunch of little points to make a thing. If I recall my art history right. I'm pretty close to being done. There's a couple spots that I still need to work on. And then there's a couple spots that I want to kind of improve here and there. We're going to have to like reinforce some lines again because we've gotten away from our original line set. So I'm going to do that. This has actually turned out pretty well in my opinion. I might want to have some more stuff going on with this yellow. Not sure if I'm totally convinced by it just yet. Pointillism is just pixel art done with paint. That's a fairly decent explanation of it, yes. That stroke was wrong, but I'm going to have the confidence in that stroke that I'm okay with it. You eventually get better at doing lines by just having confidence that you're actually going to do it right the first time. Because if you allow yourself to go back and bop over and over and over again, it's going to be... you're going to lose something. Your lines will look shakier. It's something that I'm still trying to break myself out of. You see me still do it a little bit where I go whoop, 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 like I just did there. Even while I'm talking about not doing, don't do this, I still do it, which is hilarious, but also something very much that I would do. And you'll notice that I've abandoned trying to like get the smooth edges of some of the skull there. And we're just going with other stuff instead. Like I'm just sharpening lines left, right, and center. I'm gonna bring this guy back, that little friend. Did we run out of space? Card is full. Okay. So I guess that's where I'm stopping for now. I would say I'm like 90% done. What is my end goal with this painting? Something along these lines. I want to fix up that area because it was one of the first areas I touched. I'd like to either add more yellow or what have you. I'd like more gradients. I like this area here. I like that area there, though I do want to reinforce the black lines. But I feel like we've reached something that I am fairly confident in. It's bizarre, but I think it's kind of cool. But this is more or less how you do analytic cubism. If you want to do synthetic cubism, do this but without looking at something. And that's essentially what you're looking at. There's no paint right there. Huh. So I'm going to have to find a couple other spots like that where I don't have paint, but you know, We'll worry about that later. So, if you have, or if you can, go ahead and send me your art. We can look at it, and we can see what we're doing. Let me turn that off for just a sec real quick. Do we have the music off this entire stream, or did I just turn it off? Oh, jeez. Tell me I didn't have the music off this entire stream. I did, didn't I? I'm turning it on right now. I've had the music going this entire time. It was off. Well, I guess we weren't listening to Kevin MacLeod this entire time. It was on in the beginning. Cool. Alright, let's see what art we got here. We got one from Magic Star. We're gonna check real quick on that. Don't worry, it was a good stream. Well, as long as you guys are happy with it. Put on the music so that way it's less dull. Hopefully me rambling was enough to cover this stream. So we got this skull from Magic Star, or Star Heaven 07. I like how you went for more iconic, like rather than like going with like actually trying to depict a skull as is, like a realistic looking skull. So I think you're headed in the right direction as far as that goes. Doing it digitally is going to make the marks a lot harder to do. But I do see, like, up in the top left corner and over on the right a bit, that the angles are going, like, bottom left to top right and stuff like that. I like the top left corner, actually, quite a bit. I still like that you added a banana, it looks like. If your voice was a color, it would be gold. Well, thank you. I assume that's because it's silky. After dropping the DOS program, I decided to switch to the good old tablet. I hate that you decided to go with Garfield. But it is as if you looked at Garfield from every conceivable angle and made some eldritch horror. You've done good, Dude McSpooks. Or Nerd Baron. That's totally fine, Bear Cow. If you did something else aside from, you know, whatever we were working on. Oh, this is interesting. Kato. So this is the finished one of that lion. And here is the actual stuffed animal. That's wicked. So this is viewed, so this right here is like the view from like the left, like viewing it I guess from the right, and then you got over here as well. Huh. I like it. It's weird. I like weird stuff. I never mean weird as a insult. I tried my hand at the shot redraw 4 for the 1954 animated Animal Farm film. Farmer Jones designed to be designed is so my aesthetic character-wise is almost unsettling. So here's the original, or is this your drawing? I'm gonna bet that this is your drawing, because this is probably the original, because like the blur and grain kind of makes me feel like this was originally on like a 1950s thing. I like your choices of colors. Yeah, that oh, there it is. There's the signature. This looks a lot more crisp because you're not using like oily crappy film from like 1950 something. You've got just like a much cleaner aesthetic. This looks more Ren and Stimpy because of it. I like it. I like the redraw. I think I agree with Chad. I think I like the redraw a bit more. It may be just because it's a little bit more modern. It's good work, though. Ta-da! Now in full HD. The better camera definitely did help this out quite a bit. Yeah. I like that you got the inside of the lamp. This is something I was really trying to push people to do, but I like that you went for the inside of the lamp and you tried to get some other stuff going. It's very neat, and I'm glad you went full into it. Oh, and here's the knife. I don't know what to put in the bottom. I'm starting to like what I'm doing with the yellow, but it's still a work in progress. This art style takes so much longer than a traditional painting. Because a traditional painting, like I said, you can just use a heaping huge wad of it on a big brush and just sweep that in real fast. With this, the thing that makes it look good, the thing that gives it so much of the aesthetic is the bip, 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 rather than the like just slap and get a huge wad of it on. So I like that you were working in that direction. I can tell definitely with the yellow in the top here that you were working in that direction, and that makes me really happy because you're working on it. I realize that I'm also a lot faster of an artist just by being, 30 years old and have been doing this for a while. I probably should have taken that into account when making this lesson, and I think I will. But what noise? Was it the slap noise, or is it that the AC is leaking in the background? Can you actually hear that? But yeah. I like that everyone went full into that. What was that windy noise that you just made? I have no idea. This Beps are killing my arm. It's messed with some of the layers, and I got something I do find interesting. So would you be willing to work the very basic tutorials explaining mundane stuff like art or line weight? This was supposed to be an attempt to do that. Yeah, I think, well, let's go back to this one real quick. If you want to fill out this area, try moving the knife in a different direction and focus less on trying to get it right, You saw how he did the skull, or I mean not the skull, the guitar. He went weird with it. You could also just start throwing in some lines to of other stuff in the room, Like maybe a shelf you've got going. You can try and draw the shelf, then bring in some of the lines like, oh well, this line from the shelf is now this line from the knife, and then just draw the rest of the knife off from there, and then connect it up over here and do some weird stuff. Kind of like how I did with mine. This is the edge of the laptop there, and then it works its way into the bottom of the skull, and it does so fairly evenly. And then the side of the skull is also the side of the lamp. Try and work maybe a little bit of that into what you got going on. I think you'll be happy with the result. I do like that you're really going for it, though. That was my biggest worry, is that people were going to get scared off by this project. I only had that worry about 5 minutes before I started. As far as this one, line weight, I need to have a better lesson for that, and I need to get into the basics of how to do art better. This might have been too ambitious of a project for what we were trying to do. But I do like that everyone went in on it full attempt. Very old project. I wanted to do a custom CSGO skin, but it was canceled. It was like 3 years ago, but I still drew it with a mouse. You are a masochist, my friend. But this is a cool... I like the colors. I would get this on my CSGO gun. I like it. Do I have a date set in mind for the next art stream? I do have my schedule for the next 2 weeks out, so I could probably set one here soon, but I don't have one yet. I'm gonna have to think of a project first. But I like the Dr. Zeus thing. You are a masochist for trying to do this with a mouse, though. Very good work. Photoshop has a tendency to crash on me, but this is what I was able to do. Also kind of Dr. Zeusy. Your skull looks like a Doom Revenant. That's awesome. Next time I'll make sure the music's running. I'm glad that you enjoy them. I like this. It's weird. It's a little bit off of what we were doing as the project. But I like that you use the right colors. It's bizarre though. This again looks like something Dr. Zeus would have. Like maybe when he was feeling a little off and was like maybe doing some like coloring out to the line, because he kept fairly inside the lines. That's really what I mean. But like the weird tangle of like bits seems very Zeusy. Maybe have a game jam with a focus on art. I'll think about it. I was thinking about the game jam the other day. During the art stream, I started doing something for a future thing, maybe. I like your rendering. Super nice. Not a lot I can say about this, because it's still like a work in progress, but you definitely have a talent for this. And tell you that much. Yeah, maybe Tex Avery on that last one. More so than, yeah, like a mid-50s, 60s design. It's fair. But I like what you got going on, Chuckler Cheese. You very clearly have a talent for art. I would be surprised to learn that you are self-taught. I work kind of slow. I would recommend working slow, honestly. People are like, oh, I can whip that out in like 5 minutes. Like, great. But sometimes that's bad. Learn to go slow. Slow's fast, fast is slow. But I like the art that people came up with. I will try and do something less ambitious next time. I was hoping that the abstraction of it would make it more accessible, but I feel like it made it less accessible. So I will keep that in mind for next time, and I'll work on it. I'll also make sure the music's running. But that is me for stream right now. I might stream something else, like video game related, here in a bit, but I kind of decompress for a bit first and kind of think about what I'm doing. So, in the meantime, if you liked this, let me know. Give me some ideas on stuff that you want to focus on, and I'm going to try and figure out a better way of teaching it than what I'm doing here. Because what I'm doing here is cool, don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like it's serving the base level art that needs to be helped. So I'll work on that. I'll work on coming up with something that's a little bit easier for newbies to begin with, because this was not a terribly great stream for that, but I will try. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to try and do something that's also easy that you could pick up with the mouse as well. I'll figure it out. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for coming on by. I will see you guys later. All right. Bye!